Hey Book Dragons, I am so glad that you have joined me on the channel today. The book review I have for you today is for The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. And this is a reread for me, and I don't normally review rereads on the channel, but I've never reviewed The Hobbit on my channel, so I wanted to do it this time. I would love to say that I read it from this edition. This is an absolutely beautiful edition. This is the Tolkien Estate's newest official edition of The Hobbit, and it's just beautiful. But I did not read it physically. No, I read it on audiobook. I got my little earbuds here, so I read a little bit with these, but mostly in the car. I listened to it in my car, going to and fro and there and back again. I absolutely had a blast. Andy Serkis is the narrator for the book. And I have such a fond background with The Hobbit. I read it for the first time in my 30s. Now guys, we all know I'm no longer in my 30s. Far from it. I left my 30s behind a long time ago. Back when I was young and sexy and ripped. I was never ripped. I read it back then because I wanted to experience it for the first time before I introduced it to my kids. Not that I was worried about content. I knew it was a book that was written for kids. But I just wanted to have a glimpse into that world before engaging with them. Because I had already read The Lord of the Rings. I kind of did it backwards. I read Lord of the Rings first, and then I read The Hobbit. I know it's weird. But yeah, so I read it for the first time in my 30s, and then I read it twice more with my kids. My kids absolutely love it. I remember the peals of laughter from my kids when the dwarves are first showing up at Frodo's door, and just every time he thinks that he's done receiving visitors, he gets another visitor, and it's absolutely hilarious. And my kids just rolled with laughter and hearing their little giggles, and I just have so many fond memories of this book. So I wanted to try something different, and I love Andy Serkis. He's a phenomenal actor, a phenomenal voice actor. And if you're not familiar with Andy Serkis, he did the voice for Gollum in the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit movies. So you know who Andy Serkis is. He's just phenomenal. And when I heard that there was a new recording of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, I decided that I had to pick those up and experience it with his narration. He does the Silmarillion as well, by the way. This was the year that I had decided I was going to do a reread of The Lord of the Rings. I had not planned to reread The Hobbit. But I decided that since I'm going to be rereading Lord of the Rings, I might as well reread The Hobbit as well. It's a short book, and so I fired up the audiobook in January. I'm here to tell you guys, this is one of the best ways to experience The Hobbit. Of course, I highly encourage you to read the physical book as well, but if you want a new and fresh take on The Hobbit, read by somebody else, I highly encourage you to pick up this audiobook. Andy Serkis brings this book to life in such a magnificent way. Not only does he do the voice of Gollum that we all know and love, that he's been catapulted to fame for. That's really, I think, what kick-started his career, if I'm not mistaken. He'd been in other stuff, but Gollum is really his forte. So yes, he did the voice for Gollum, but of course he did the voices for all the other characters. He did a really good version of Gandalf. He did all the different voices for the dwarves. He sang the songs, guys, and there are some magnificent songs in this book, not the least of which is The Misty Mountains. And he sings that one. He sings all the songs. It's just positively amazing. And when he's reading to you the parts about the dwarves showing up at Frodo's door and the more frustrated Frodo gets, that the way he reads it just has you rolling with laughter. I mean, I was in my car, so I couldn't roll with laughter, otherwise I'd roll the car, right? But it was just one of those experiences where I was laughing out loud in the car as I was listening to this, and it seems like he was just the perfect narrator for this. His voice for Gollum has not changed, it's still just as perfect as it always was. And he does the voice for Smaug, which I thought was just magnificently done by Benedict Cumberbatch in the adaptation. But boy, I tell you what, I was just on the edge of my seat listening to him perform Smaug in such a way that it was frightful. In a good way. That the tension was just palpable. You could feel the anger and emotions and maniacal humor of Smaug. Oh my goodness, guys. It was just so well done. If you're looking for something to listen to on a long road trip, I definitely recommend the Hobbit audiobook. Now, this isn't just about the audiobook. I don't want to make the whole review about the audiobook because I want to talk about some of my experiences rereading the book just in general. And it's funny how many things you forget as the years go by. Even the little things, like how the dwarves helped Frodo clean up all the dishes after he had done so much work to feed them and house them and everything, and the sheer absence of Gandalf for large portions of the book. And I'd also forgotten how deep and evocative some of the songs are. Because when you're reading the book, you read the songs and you try and sing them. You try and think about what those songs would be like if they were set to music, but they're not nearly as evocative as hearing it sung, right? And so we've got the Misty Mountains song from the movie adaptation, and that's actually the one that he does in the audiobook as well. And it was just so deeply evocative. Emotionally, you could feel the emotions of the dwarves about their homeland, about the mountain that they were wanting to take back from the dragon. It was just absolutely amazing. So things like that, you forget over time how real and how personal that was for the dwarves. And rereading it brought back those memories for me of reading it with my kids and laughing hysterically at times, and the tension that was building at times as we were wondering how things were going to turn out. And it was just a beautiful experience doing this reread for me. When they got to the dragon's lair, and to be sneaking around with the dragon and trying not to disturb him and trying to find the treasures. It was just so neat to experience that again. I just had a blast, and I'm so happy that I got to reread this book. And I think Bilbo is a very relatable character because he's always been a homebody. He doesn't really do much outside of his little hobbit hole in his little hobbit town. And this is his first real adventure going out into the wild unknown of Middle-earth. And I think many of us can relate to that with moving away from our homes, going into the wide world of adulthood, and experiencing all these new feelings and emotions and terrors and fears. There's so much wrapped up in this adventure. And it's kind of funny because in the book it's talked about how Bilbo has a little bit of a took in him. Just a little bit. He's exploring his tookish side. And tooks tend to be more adventurous and more daring and risky, I guess. And so it's kind of funny to see him exploring his tookish side rather than his Baggins side for a change. And there were times that he regretted exploring his tookish side. So little tidbits like that I don't remember reading before, but that really meant a lot to me, that I could really relate to and resonate with. It was just an amazing experience. And there were so many side quests to the adventure, going into the Elven Kingdom, and the tensions rising between the dwarves and the elves. and everybody's wanting to start getting their cut of the adventure. And then after everything is over and they're on their way back, they have to get involved in this big battle, and they have to try and make alliances and promises, and everybody wants a piece of the treasure. There is just so much more to this book than I remembered, and so I'm so glad I took the opportunity to reread the book, and I hope that you will read The Hobbit for yourself as well. If you've never read it before, you really need to get on it, because it's a lovely book, really easy read. It's a short read. And if you've read it in the past but you haven't had a chance to reread it, maybe you haven't reread it with the audiobook, give the audiobook a listen. It is just fantastic. If you love Andy Serkis doing Gollum, you're going to love the audiobook. So that's really all I have to say. I've rambled, and I haven't said that much probably, even though it seems like a lot. So in case you're wondering how I would rate this book, of course, I love it. I give it a huge, big old heart. I could read it again and again. It's one of my absolute favorite books. So that's all I'm going to say. Let me know in the comments what you think. Have you read The Hobbit? Have you done the audiobook for The Hobbit? Maybe you did the previous audiobook and not the one by Andy Serkis. Let me know that as well. And I would highly recommend that you pick up the one by Andy Serkis. Until next time, guys, make sure you read more books and have more great reading experiences. I'll talk with you soon. And I'd like to give a huge shout out to my patrons. I really appreciate all you do to support the channel. It means a lot to me.